Чудова нагода поговорити про прозорість і ефективність держави сьогодні і про гарну ініціативу прозорості у видобувній галузі. В нас просто завдяки чудовій погоді і фантастичному вересневому ранку міжнародний експерт десь загубився, ми його знайдемо, поки прийде його черга доповідати. І я хочу сказати, що цей рік дуже був ефективним і гарним з точки зору розвитку законодавства щодо прозорості у видобувній галузі. І Україна насправді вперше, можливо, зможе показати, чи в українському суспільстві вперше може відбутися нормальна дискусія з приводу того, хто, що і скільки, і як заробив у видобувній галузі, у сфері нафти і газу. Це сталося завдяки конструктивній роботі з міжнародною ініціативою по прозорості видобувній галузі. Зазвичай екзотика цієї історії починається з того, що цю ідею винайшов Тоні Блер для діамантів Сєра-Леоне, здається, десь так. І потім ця ідея знайшла своє практичне застосування у видобутку нафти і газу, в першу чергу, а також інших корисних копалин. А для України питання газове якесь є теж таки дуже підставове і дуже важливе для українського суспільства. Тому ця робота, попри те, що вона є нішова, і цей проект, попри те, що він є нішовий, насправді є дуже важливим для формування дискусії щодо реформування сфери енергетики, взагалі розвитку сфери енергетики в Україні. І тому я в першу чергу хочу запросити до слова Діну Нарезhnеву, яка є головою секретаріату в ініціативи прозорості видобувній галузі в Україні, для того, щоб вона представила цей проект, і далі ми зможемо в деталях поговорити, як він реалізується і які є його особливості. Діна, прошу.
Дякую, Тарасе. Я почну з того, що ініціатива прозорості видобувних галузей – це, перш за все, стандарт. Це міжнародний незалежний стандарт, який наразі підтримують і імплементують 48 країн в світі. Що він собою представляє, якщо дуже коротко і, скажімо так, практично? Стандарт має на меті такий механізм. Коли компанії видобувного сектору показують всю інформацію щодо всіх податків і всіх платежів, які вони сплачують на користь нашої держави. В свою чергу, уряд має оприлюднювати всі такі надходження, які він отримав від видобувної галузі. Ці дані потім зіставляються у звіті країн, який виходить щорічно, і зіставляються вони незалежним адміністратором, які обираються на відкритій конкурсній основі. Щодо України. Україна приєдналася до ініціативи прозорості видобувних галузей у 2009 році і в 2013 році отримала статус країни-кандидата. З того часу було здійснено дуже велику кількість кроків щодо імплементації, і ми досягли значного прогресу. Перш за все, було прийнято необхідна нормативна правова база. Це закон України про посилення прозорості у видобувних галузей. Це підзаконні акти, тобто є розпорядження Кабінету міністрів, яке передбачає обов'язок органів державної влади розкривати цю інформацію. Вже на підході у нас порядок, який чітко визначає і обов'язок видобувних компаній надавати цю інформацію. Тобто це дуже детальний документ, і наразі він також проходить узгодження в центральних органів виконавчої влади. Також дуже прогресивним кроком було створення національного секретаріату, який я представляю. Обрано нарешті у нас незалежного адміністратора. Цього року це компанія Ernst&Young, яка вже почала збір даних і яка вже готує наш перший національний звіт. Я не буду трішки зараз дуже в деталях зупинятися, тому що зараз наш спікер Ilhem, яка зараз до нас приєднається, вона вам може дуже детально пояснити, власне, що таке Eiti і які вимоги висуваються до всіх країн. В свою чергу Андрій вам розкаже про стан підготовки нашого звіту, з якими ми зіткнулися складнощами і як він буде виглядати, цей документ, що він для нас, для всіх означатиме. Хочу також окремо відзначити, що весь процес імплементації ініціативи в Україні контролюється багатосторонньою групою зацікавлених осіб. Що таке багатостороння група? Це представники бізнесу, це представники громадськості і представники центральних органів виконавчої влади. Олена, яка тут присутня, вона зараз також надасть більш детальну інформацію про формати її роботи, в чому полягає контроль і в чому полягає прозорість функціонування такої групи. Якщо коротко, то дуже дякую.
Дякую, Діно. Я хочу також наголосити на тому, що ініціатива про прозорості, це реалізація цього проекту цього року, це результат дуже великої кількості зусиль, таких, можливо, лобійських в такому класичному значенні цього слова, тому що насправді дуже велика робота була проведена щодо агітування уряду і передусім і парламенту в першу чергу для того, щоб створити.
We motivated government to create legislative basis for this initiative, and the importance of this reform is really crucial. And Elena Pavlenka may be one of the best specialists in the sphere, and maybe we will give the floor. So I'm Elena Pavlenka. I represent Dixie Group. And also I represent multilateral group of that should promote implementation of the transparency initiative. This group was created in 2013, and it consists of three sides: business, public and government, and not only Ministry of Energy, but other ministries that that are associated with the sphere. We created our own statute. We work. We take decisions by consensus, and I would say that this is one of the best formats that I ever seen. How we can work together, public, business, and government all together to create some good decisions, and we would be glad to share our experience how to work effectively in this way in Ukraine that is trying to fight corruption and old bureaucracy. Why it is important? It is public information for the public, for those people who live in the regions. Their oil and gas are extracted, taxes, and what companies work in their region, what companies have licenses, but
what companies have licenses, but they're not working and not paying taxes. All this information should be disclosed in the ITI report. I would also like to say that the statement that this is only for Africa countries or other third world countries, that is not true, because US, Canada, Australia, and other countries have classic procedure of transparencies and reporting. So we are moving towards this norm that is already implemented in developed countries. In addition, we need to point out that transparency initiative for extracting industries is Ukrainian international obligation. It's part of requirement by the World Bank and European Commission to provide second tranche of financial assistance. So, timely publication of the ITI report is not just suggestion or assignment, but it's requirement by international financial institutions. Our MSG has done everything to publish this report on time. According to requirements of our initiative, which are very strict, we have made public tender to choose independent administrator to gather data as MSG, we have provided transparency of this process, its discussion. We have chosen the administrator, and now we are waiting for the first report. In addition, as representative of MSG, I would like to say that this process of gathering data is quite complicated. We were hoping that the worst problems would be with companies who would not want to show their taxes and numbers. Yes, part of companies do not want to show their taxes, and in reality, this is not a surprise, because there are some companies that are not transparent, and I will not name them, but I hope they will get worried for their image and they will provide the data. But there is also a problem with with public agencies, state fiscal service, that must give the data on behalf of the government on the taxes paid by the companies. The state fiscal service does not disclose their information either. 2 letters were sent to them, and the Ministry of Energy has received some formal reply. We have raised this question as a NGO, but no numbers are given to us. So we'd like to use the opportunity to ask State Fiscal Service, in addition to the fact that they are creating international problems by lack of informing, we need to give this data to get this data for timely publication of report. Now I'd like to invite Ilhem Salamon, the expert from the World Bank, the senior energy economist, to provide international perspective of this report, its importance in creating state policy for oil and gas extraction.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to say that it's a pleasure for the bank to be here and to support the effort that Ukraine is developing towards transparency and accountability in the oil and gas and extractive industry. So, if I may, I would like to step back a bit and provide you with some background information on what is EITI and what you should expect to see in the report. And then I would pass the floor to our colleague from Ernst&Young so that they can tell you what is actually in the report, and that you can provide your input and let us know, if in the future you think it would be relevant to have additional information. So EITI, it's a global. I'm not very good with technology, so. Okay, so I will have a presentation just in 3 parts. First, I will discuss what's EITI and how it helps a country with extractive industry manage properly their resource. Then I will say a word on where we stand in Ukraine with the EITI process. And then what's your role in EITI and how you can help your country move forward with the transparency agenda. So, okay. So EITI is a global standard which is adopted by a number of countries. There are 48 countries which are implementing the global standard of accountability and transparency. And there are 90 international companies that are supporting the process. A number of the major oil and gas companies are supporting the process, and of course it's not because they care so much about transparency in itself, but it's because it has value for them, and they understand that in this world today there is reputational risk, and that being transparent is no longer a requirement. It's really an expectation. It's the minimum required for international companies. In addition to the 90 international oil and gas companies, and as you can imagine, I mean, those are very large companies. So when you are talking about 90 extractive companies, basically you are talking about most of the largest companies in the world. And so in addition to this company, there's more than 400 civil society organizations which are part of the process, and the number of donor and international financial institutions such as the World Bank who are supportive of the process. What the standard does is that it provides a methodology to translate, the objective of transparency into concrete goals. It's great, to want to be transparent, but concretely, what does that mean, and how do you implement transparency in a sector that is as complex as the gas sector, as the oil sector, as all the extractive industries? So it does provide you with a concrete methodology, and the countries which are members, which apply the standard, basically they produce every year a report with input from most of the stakeholders of the sector. And this report has two parts. One part basically is called contextual information, and it describes all the reforms and all the sector issues, like how the sector is structured, how it is organized, how it is functioning, what is its performance, and how it can be benchmarked to international best practice. So basically it tries to explain very complex issues in the simplest possible way. And that's very important indeed, to make sure that people can understand what's going on in the sector and what are the key reforms and what's their performance. And then the hardcore part of EITI reports is that it reconciles the revenue flows of the sector. So basically it looks at how much money comes out of the pocket of the company and how much money goes inside the pocket of the government, and it looks if there's a match. In some countries, that's not the case. In some of the countries, there was a discrepancy of up to $20 billion, so it can be a big issue. And in other countries, it's very important, to make sure that the system out there, so that even if there's not such a discrepancy, people can make sure that they understand, where are the revenue going and how they are flowing, and to make sure, that the systems are sound. So in such country, basically, EITI try to strengthen the system and make sure that, there is a mechanism for the population to understand the revenue flows and the sector. So that's basically what it is. And it really has two key elements, accountability and transparency, as I said. Okay. So I won't go into the details of the benefit of EITI. It's quite obvious. I think that the most apparent for a country like Ukraine is that it can strengthen considerably the investment climate and foster investment in the sector, which is something that is very important. And I will explain how EITI, how to become EITI compliant, basically. So to become an EITI country, you have first sign-up steps. And basically, it's quite simple. You have to have a high-level commitment. So generally, it's a minister who sends a letter and commit on behalf of the government, to implement, the standard of transparency and the requirement of EITI. Then you have to make sure that the process is going to involve, different stakeholders of the sector, that the civil society is going to be involved, that the company are going to be involved, that government officials are going to be involved. So everyone who has a say, in the sector is able to be represented in a multi-stakeholder group. So you want that this group exists, that it functions, that it has the means to function, and that it is led by a high-level official. So this also Ukraine has done. And you want to make sure that, this group has a work program that set objectives that are aligned with the reform agenda of the country. So that's basically the full sign-up step. And once you have this commitment and the EITI board assesses your commitment and it believes that it is credible, then you become a candidate country. And once you are a candidate country, then you have to become, you are officially running to become compliant. And that's where Ukraine is. So to become compliant, basically, as we said, in a very simplified way, you have to produce a report with two parts. One is, about explaining to your citizen what's going on in the extractive industry, and the second part is, showing that basically there is transparency and things are working in terms of reconciliation of revenue flows in your sector. And the methodology is very detailed. I mean, there's tremendous research that is underpinning the requirement of EITI. And the methodology is very solid behind the EITI requirement. So, but beyond the simple publication of the report, what is important is discussion like the one that we have now, where basically under the leadership of the multi-stakeholder group, I mean, you have the involvement of the civil society, of the journalists, of youth, of companies, and you ask, people what is important for them to know from the extractive industry, what is of the main interest, for the country. So when you are in Latin America, for instance, I mean, there's a lot of offshore production, and a great concern of the population is the environmental impact of offshore production. And in Latin America, a lot of people, I mean, live from tourism. So the development of petroleum, offshore petroleum production, for instance, can have a very negative impact on their revenue. So the population wants that, in addition to the minimum requirement of EITI, there is a reporting on environmental impact of petroleum production. And so in each region of the world, there are different requirements and there are specific issues. And it is up to the civil society, to the journalists, to the population, to the private company, to raise their voice through the EITI platform, which is really a platform of dialogue, and to say, what are the information that they would like to have in addition to the mandatory requirement on the financial revenue flows. So basically, EITI board is going to assess whether there is such a dialogue in Ukraine and whether there is a true drive, I mean, to bring, the concern of the population within this dialogue, and whether the report in the long term is going really to reflect, to bring relevant information for the population. So. Of course, I mean, it is Ukraine is starting the process. So from the beginning, it is hard to develop a report that is going to match all the expectations of everyone. So it's a process. And what we appreciate is that from the preparation of the very first report, I mean, the MSG is inviting you and explaining you what to expect from this report and telling you that, there will be a first report that you will be welcome to comment, and that along the way, really, the reporting requirement will be adjusted to your needs. So that's basically, so you have the 7 requirements. They are very strict, and they are assessed in a rather severe manner for the moment. The EITI board is looking at the validation process, because for the moment it's either the case that you fulfill all the requirements or you are not EITI compliant. And it can be demanding, and in some cases, I mean, you may not be able, I mean, to fulfill all the requirements, and you can still be relatively compliant. So, for instance, the requirement of the timely publication of the report is something that can be difficult to manage, and it's not necessarily because you are unable to publish timely a report that you have transparency issues. So for that reason, I mean, there's an ongoing dialogue with the EITI board, and there might be some changes. So I'm not going to go through all the details of that, but basically, as Elena explained, I mean, the country is EITI candidate since 2009, and there's a major step that is upcoming, and that's really the publication of the first EITI report, which is going to be, which is in draft, and which is going to be presented by our colleague from Ernst&Young. The process in Ukraine started relatively late. We know that the country is going through a difficult time, and it's not always easy, I mean, to move all the agenda at the best pace. So the process started late, and as a result, I mean, it is the consultants are under a tremendous pressure, I mean, to develop, you know, the first EITI report in line with the second requirement, which is to publish it on time so that the country can be compliant. So the challenges are many, but I mean, one of the key challenges that we see is that, I mean, there have been a lot of effort developed by the civil society, by the MSG, by the CSCTI, MSG and National Secretariat to make sure that a new law on transparency and accountability could be implemented. And that's been the case. And now the issue is really to make sure that the law, which has been promulgated, is going to be followed by all the companies that are interested. And here I think you have all the company and the administration. And it is really, I think, a radical change in habit, a radical change in the way of doing business. And for a company or for administration which are not used, I mean, to report at such a level of detail and with so much precision, you know, on their activities, on their financial revenues, it is really a cultural shock. So a lot of effort are still needed, I mean, to make sure that the consultants are going to get access to the information and that they would get access to the information timely. But I mean, there is really a need for a strong push because there's not much time, basically. The deadline is October 17, and by then the report needs to be published. So we think that, I mean, really the approval of the bylaws on transparency would help tremendously. So the challenge of the finalization of the preparation of the first report is obvious, and our colleagues are going from Ernst&Young are going to discuss that. And then another challenge for Ukraine is to make sure that this is not just a report that is prepared and put on a shelf, but that basically this is part of a true transformation and a true improvement toward enhanced transparency in the sector. And for that, you know, the World Bank is available, I mean, to provide further support to make sure that Ukraine can develop a system to enhance transparency in the oil and gas sector, so that in a longer term, there's no need, you know, to have a manual publication, a report that is done manually every year, but that rather you can generate information on the financial revenue flows of the sector and the key information on the regulation and the organization of the sector through IT system. So that's the support that we can do, and we are available, I mean, to help the country as needed. Your role is obvious, I think, in the process. Let me make sure I have the good slide, because I can't read Ukrainian, unfortunately. You are the one who know the best what is of interest for the population. You are the one who know the best, I mean, how to translate, you know, complex information into key messages for the population, and you are the one who can be the best, in the best position to guarantee a good oversight of the sector. So your your input in the system are very much welcome. We brought a little brochure on the extractive industry. It's an old reading that was developed by the bank, and it is still very relevant, I thought. It really explains, the value chain in the extractive industry, how value is created, and what are the key issues that the population should focus on along the chain. So I think it's something that is very interesting. We brought also the fact sheet in English, Russian, and Ukrainian on Eiti, so that you can know concretely and bear in mind, what are the key principles and the key requirements of Eiti. And we also brought a copy of our presentation. I am available at any time to address any question. And now I'm going to pass the floor to our colleague from Ernst&Young so that they can present what the report is and what are the challenges that they are facing.
Thank you. Дякую. Доброго дня всім.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. My name is Andriy Kitura, and I represent Ernst&Young. Thank you for coming here and supporting this initiative for Ukraine, which is new, and we must do it. This is expectation of international community, and our nation, Ukraine, our society in general, is expecting it very much. I would like to give you a little detail on specificity of this report, on its importance, its details, and I would like to go into small details. First, this standard, Eiti. This is a very detailed document on what needs to be published, how, what are the requirements set before the country. The philosophy of this standard is different from what we are used to see. Transparency, openness, clarity in this standard, and the understanding of many developed countries of the world is possible. It's possible to find any number in Google, just 2-3 clicks, and you can find information necessary for other countries. So our country is not in such a good state as other countries. It could be open formally, but it could be not accessible publicly. It could be prepared only on paper, only in some bureaucrat's office, and it takes many steps to get to that office, and there is no guarantee you'll get it at the end. So we need to reach such transparency and clarity in extracting industry so that journalists, interest experts, public officials, anyone who has questions related to extracting resources in their country could get this information in open access. That's the most important. The report. This report is not an audit. It's very important for you to understand. We are an auditing company. This is our main business, but this report is not an audit report. We are gathering numbers, data, on the work of extracting companies, on payments that they do for the Ukrainian budget, but we also are gathering information from public authorities, and we compare these numbers. Our task is to compare two numbers, and if there is discrepancy, we need to try to understand why. We are not checking every number. We are not confirming their validity. We believe it. If it's official report of State Fiscal Service or ABC companies, then signed by authorized person, we believe these numbers are true. We just need to compare those numbers. This is a first report of Ukraine in the framework of the standard, and so the first step should be such as we can manage. So that the scope of this report would be narrower than that of other countries. First report would cover oil and gas. although standard covers every extracting industry. So next year we'd like to add coal and iron ore. Maybe in the future we'll add other valuable minerals, but now we talk about extracting and transportation of oil and gas produced in Ukraine. As we said, we need to publish it by 17th of October 2015, so we have very little time left. Very briefly about stages of preparing this report. As it is the first report of our country as part of Eiti, we had to prepare to do a lot of preparation. We needed to define the circle of companies that should have been reflected in the report. We need to list all possible payments that are done by companies for the state. I don't think you'll be surprised if I'll tell you that in order to begin extraction of minerals in Ukraine, certain work needs to be done with 40 different agencies and institutions to get all necessary permissions and approvals. It's a lengthy process, and company needs to pay at every stage. Sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger, but it's not easy. So we need to list all agencies, all institutions, all payments, and that was hard. That was done in the first stage when we assessed costs and prepared surveys that were sent to all companies and state institutions. Second, most important thing in quality of the data is actually gathering detailed data. It was not easy as well. Some companies, for whatever reasons, are not able or are not willing to provide necessary information in the format that Ukraine needs to report. On the other hand, many state agencies are not very effective in their operations, and they cannot always give data in timely manner, and working with them is sometimes very difficult. Third stage is matching the numbers received from both sides, from the state and from the business, and to explain the differences if those happens. Let me tell you that differences happen always, and not just in Ukraine. It's hard to say now how our differences would be different from other countries, but let's say Norway is a high-developed country, no question here. But if I'm not mistaken, the discrepancy was about 40%. In 40% cases, or for 40% companies, there was a difference between what company believed they paid to the state and what state believed they received from the company. So if we find discrepancies in Ukraine, it's not sign of catastrophic event or situation in Ukraine. Of course, it's not normal, but this situation is quite typical even in developed countries of the world. Like my colleagues said, in some countries the discrepancies can be billions of dollars. It will not be as huge in our country, but this sector for Ukraine is not as powerful as in, say, Persian Gulf countries. But after this matching is done, then actual report is being developed to reach certain fullness of information and methodological conditions. We need to follow specific condition that it should be clear, open, and understandable for a wide audience, which is hard. This extraction industry for oil and gas, specifically, has many unique details that majority of population would not know. And giving this information in a clear and understandable form is a challenge. But we need to make sure it happens. You already heard that there are two parts of the report. First is contextual, that is mainly descriptive, to say about specificity of the sector, about the trends and details, the norms, the legislation that define the activities in the sector, the responsibilities of the government and agencies that control and oversee, the fiscal principles that are complicated in Ukraine, unfortunately. And another very important question within this standard, and just to understand the sector, is to estimate the share of the sector in the whole economy of the country. We have heard many times that some region or some sector are feeding the whole nation while others are paid nobody knows for what. Well, this specific report will show the real number, the share or the input of this sector in the whole overall economy of the country. Another important element of this report is disclosure of how the funds received from oil and gas sector are used by the nation. This question cannot be completely solved in our reality, because the 95% of all payments are getting into the overall budget, and then they're distributed among the costs. So it's hard to follow through every hryvnia or dollar that has come from oil and gas. But just for general understanding, what kinds of budgets, what kinds of volumes, and what is a comparison to the costs of our society in medicine or education. This understanding will come to our people after the report is published. Second part of report, comparison of numbers. It has all payments that are given to the state, but they could be blocked in several areas. First block is the payment directly to the budget, either state or local. Second block is involved in payment for state companies or budget supported companies. These are the payments for licenses in all stages, all the agencies that you need to go to perform activities in extraction industries, the companies that provide scientific and administrative services, geological assessment, providing information, investigation, and research. There are many companies like that in our nation. They are state-owned companies, so they receive certain payments. But before, it was hard to get this information, and still it is hard, because they have not. Many of them have not responded to our survey yet. There are thousands of many other payments that are financial or non-financial. What I mean is, very often private companies of extracting industries are taking social burden, like paying for the roads, helping communities, building schools, or renovating schools. I think if private company would not do it, then the state would need to do it. This is the social function given to the government. But if a private company does it, then in fact that could be classified as benefits that state receives from this private company, because money has been saved. So we asked the companies and state agencies to give this information, and honestly, we received very few responses because of objective situation. Very often these payments are very small. It's hard to calculate them. They can be given naturally to communities, and confirming these numbers very often is impossible. But we ask the companies to disclose this information, and in future we hope to reach more transparency here. There are many specific elements of EITI reporting that would be hard to disclose fully because some quasi-fiscal incomes or costs of the state cannot be verified. For example, when Naftogaz compensates for the losses, gets compensated for the losses because of the low tariffs. So it's again use of state money for this sector. But this information is also necessary and important and interesting for population, so we try to combine it as well. So I'd like to tell you about the progress on working with companies in the sector. Only, well, less than 30% of companies have provided quality response. Quality response is somewhat valuable data, sometimes not full, sometimes not correct, but at least it was a positive response. About 10% of companies have sent response that says we refuse to give you data. Another 10% of companies, we still hope to receive data in nearest future because we work with them actively, and the management of these companies understands how important it is to disclose this information, but there are some administrative problems or technical problems, and we have not received the data, but at least half of respondents were nowhere to be found or they have not responded. About 25% of companies have licenses to extract oil and gas, but they do not respond at all, or they are not even located at the address of their registration. It's impossible to find them at this time. This is not normal situation for the country, and I think we need to seek to resolve this problem for the future. But this is a reflection of our situation for today. This is a status and progress of our work with state agencies and state companies. As you can see, overall, the biggest share of responses was received from local administrations and self-governance institutions, local fiscal services or local councils that have economic departments or planning and development departments. They're quite adequate in their responses and quite timely too. But central government agencies have provided responses in certain form where data would be material or important for our report, except for the state fiscal service that we already talked about. State companies or budget companies are a different picture. These are companies related to work in oil and gas sector, and their lack of responsiveness is justified for some companies because some worked in 2013, but now they're being closed. Only 3 officials still work, and only 1 day a week, so they physically cannot provide that information. In other cases, information was available, but there was an opposition to provide this information for our publication, our use in the report. That would be all that I wanted to say. Just to conclude, I'd like to say that for our company, it is extremely important for our company. This reporting is valuable for our state. We understand the obligation that Ukraine has taken before international community, and we want to give maximum effort to reach utmost quality in this report. But very often, we need support from state agencies and community to reach the value of this report and reputational risks if a report is not prepared on time. So I hope with your efforts, with your mouths, we will be able to convince state business and our state and private business to make this on time and of high quality. Thank you very much. Now I invite Oleksandr Vovk to make the summary of the importance of this report for our government. EITI is a very interesting initiative, and our ministry supports it from every side. We are trying to coordinate with every agency to publish the first report by October 17th. This initiative came to us timely. We have a problem in gas extracting and oil extracting sector because we had a lot of difficulties. First, rent was raised on the 2nd of August. Then the gas prices fell from $400 to $250 and maybe $220 at this time. This is a problem for extracting companies, and the main priority of energy is our energy independence and increasing our own extraction. Then there was an order to increase the monopoly of Naftogaz. There were some steps from other agencies that were not clear, and we tried to correct those things. And in the last half a year, there was a discussion on how this oil and gas sector is undergoing the taxation reform. Some say the old system was okay. Some say the new system is good. There is a question whether the companies in the sector are paying taxes at all, and EITI initiative will show whether the companies pay the rent, do they pay income tax and profit tax or not, and this information will help us make more reasonable decisions and sit around the discussion table with companies and to see if the rent can go down, if they will reinvest the profit or they will take it to shareholders. Are they willing to move around the profit tax? Because not rent but profit tax is more advanced tax. Not with a simple tax of 18% like today, but maybe some additional tax as leading practice in Europe. But before that, we need to make sure that companies actually pay the profit tax. So we are looking forward to this report, and we will support EITI, World Bank, and every other counterpart in our successful launch of the EITI report in Ukraine. Thank you very much. Several questions. First question will come from me, and because we are having this discussion about how much each company pays in public sector, and I'd like to see how much cooperation you get from the biggest state companies, Naftogaz, Ukernafta, and Gazvydobuvanya. Well, the state companies are covered by this report. They have received certain requests, and some state companies have responded faster than private companies. But not every state company has responded. When the report is published, you'll be able to see the volumes of taxes paid by state companies into the budget of Ukraine. Colleagues, let's be brief. We are limited in time. Ilhem, Radio Svoboda. Talking about state companies. How will you calculate Naftogaz and its daughter companies? Naftogaz is at loss, but they're also subsidizing a tariff. So its profit or loss is outside the scope of our research. We want to see how much funds, what's amount of funds that was paid by these companies into state budget. Everyone knows the subsidies that state budget gives to Naftogaz, so this information is already public and there is no sense of investigating it. This is not a direct task of report to insist on this. Yes, we can show that in the report, but the conclusions should be done by every person individually. if we point out that Naftogaz gets more money in subsidies than it gives in taxes, well, this is realistic. Everyone knows it anyway. Radio Svoboda. I want to clarify, Naftogaz is not extracting company. Ukrgazvidobuvanie is extracting company, and Ukernafta are extracting companies, and they're in top 10 tax-paying companies to the budget. Radio Svoboda, Krim Realia, Derkach. Anyone who is willing to respond. Is it possible today to receive any information about the volumes of extraction of Chernomor Naftogaz, the company that was taken over by Russia in Crimea? Thank you for this question. I was hoping someone would ask it. We were surprised, but we have received the response from them. The administration is moved to the land territory of Ukraine, and they have given technical information. There is a problem with getting financial figures, with real payments of taxes, but there is rational explanation. These are huge stacks of paper documents that are left at territory that we don't control, and nobody thought about getting those documents out at that time. You understand why. But there are state agencies, state financial service that will tell us, or is able to tell us about the taxes that were paid. So there is no significant information loss, but it would be harder with coal next year. There is a question? Good. Energo Business magazine. Of course, we cannot get from you the list of those companies that have given information, but Ukernafta, Poltava gas extraction company, have they given you information on how transparent they are? Unfortunately, Ernst&Young company is contractually obliged with our World Bank counterpart and MSG. We cannot give this information, but this information is available to Ministry of Energy. This is their right if they want to do that. This information will be available as part of the report. Yes, and this report would be in open access. More so, at this stage, you understand, we are working with companies, so telling now that it will not we are working with every company. We still hope to get information from everyone, so there is no sense of saying that someone is bad if we have still hope to reach success. I believe today's briefing, in addition to explanations, we have also received expectations to get good discussion and clear information about the oil and gas extracted in Ukraine and how profitable or not profitable it is for the budget. On the other hand, this is good incentive for all of us to insist that companies and state agencies who have not given information yet to still do that, to participate in this project, in this reporting, because it will increase the quality of discussion of energy reforms and taxation in energy and general state policy in oil and gas extraction, to decrease some political statements about whether tariffs are justified in their setting, if rent is too high or not. So every one of us can join constructive discussion together with state companies, so that after October 17 we can gather together in this circle of people to present real results, real numbers, and develop further discussion in the parliament and the government for further reforms. Thank you for your participation. I hope this topic made you interested, and then you will attend the following events on the subject. Thank you.